This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.
Welcome everybody to this afternoon's Executive Office Committee meeting. We have a number of members that are attending by Starleaf today, 4 members that are there, and we have 4 of us present in the room, and we have an apology then for Christopher at this stage. So we're sort of up full complement minus Christopher then to be able to proceed. Just in terms of Chairman's business, the committee has been invited before the Constitution Committee on the morning of Wednesday the 3rd of November to give its views in relation to future governance of the UK. In particular, the committee would be interested to hear members' views on devolution issues and intergovernmental relations. Are members happy enough if we proceed and arrange that, and if members could let the clerk know whether they're able to attend that or not, and maybe they'll send out a time, just an invite to that, and then people could respond if they're able to attend that or not then.
When is that, Chair?
The 3rd of November, that's 2 weeks, 3
Yep.
weeks, 2 weeks today.
It's Wednesday morning.
Wednesday.
You're in recess?
It's the Wednesday after. The recess is the 26th or something, the Wednesday the 26th.
So can I just say now I have Education Committee.
It's on in the morning. And I know Christopher will have economy, doesn't he, on a Wednesday morning? Diane, are you still on economy?
He's on education as well.
Oh,
Well, I'm on education, so I can't do the mornings at all.
Porrig, are you on education as well?
Infrastructure on a Wednesday morning.
So maybe a way of going back and asking them, is there any other time that could be done? Because that seems to be, that's clashing with about 4 or 5 members there. So, yeah, okay. We'll see if we can reschedule. We'll take in principle that people are up for meeting with them, but at the same time, maybe just find a time that suits. So, okay. Maybe as well, just under Chairman's remarks, that we know today that there's going to be a lot of information detailed later in terms of the EU publishing its way to address matters of trade. I think it's a fairly important day. There'll be a lot of information swirling about later. We had information that was put out in the public domain yesterday from the UK side, but maybe just to urge that there is, no knee-jerk reactions. If people take time to consider the proposals that are put forward, consider the implementation of them, and all sides that we all work together to try and resolve any of the issues that are there, because at the end of the day, we need to remember that we're here to work for and serve all the people, and we have to do what we can, but we'll wait until we see what information comes out this evening and then measure against that in the weeks ahead to be able to hopefully get some resolutions to problems that some have. And with that then, that will allow us to move to the minutes of draft minutes, which are on page 6 of the meeting pack. Are members content that that is a true reflection of the meeting?
Yep.
Okay, so we can propose those and have those signed. They're beside me. In terms of matters arising, we did discuss about whether the list of travel agents for the stakeholder session could be reduced to avoid duplication. There is a revised list in the table pack, which I think includes any group or body that had contacted a member, I think, that are on that list, and then maybe 1 or 2 extra, but it's just to try and keep it as tight as possible so that there's as good a session that can be done with people to get evidence, which I think is for November at this stage, that's set aside. So are members content with the revised list that's there?
Longer or shorter?
Shorter.
All right, I'm content.
Okay, then we can move on to item 5, which is the First Minister and Deputy First Minister, which is an oral briefing. Members, on pages 15 to 18 of our pack are the relevant papers, and if at this stage we could invite them up, the First and Deputy First Minister, up into the spotlight. I think I can see certainly Paul is there, and Deputy First Minister, yeah, there we go, there's Michelle's there as well. Okay, that's grand. Okay, Ministers, you're very welcome to today's meeting. Thank you very much for coming along. As ever, just to advise that the session has been recorded by Hansard and that the transcript will be published on the committee webpage. Can I maybe hand it over to yourselves to give us a short presentation, and then we can get into the questions?
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully you and your colleagues are able to hear me clearly. And can I also personally express my gratitude to have this opportunity to meet with the committee for the first time in my role as First Minister. And I did pick up earlier in the meeting that this, Mr. Chairman, will be your last meeting as the chair of the committee. So I hope that
it's the effect that you have on me, First Minister.
Well, I'm hoping the two aren't related, that you're not able to continue in this role in order to scrutinise me. But I wish you well in terms of whatever's next, and I await that announcement to see who will be replacing you in due course. You'll also have noticed that we're accompanied today by Dennis McMahon this afternoon, and I'm very happy to formally introduce Dennis to the committee as the new Permanent Secretary of the Executive Office. And I know you're going to be hearing from Dennis after this session on the October monitoring round, and that we plan to discuss with him his role within the department next month. I've no doubt that members will have a series of questions on work across the department, but Mr. Chairman, if you could indulge us, we would appreciate the opportunity to brief you on 3 key issues and update you on the latest position. First, around the pathway to recovery and lifting of COVID restrictions. That continues to be a huge priority for the Northern Ireland Executive. Committee members will be aware that COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on our citizens, on our health and on our economic and societal well-being. The pandemic has presented unprecedented challenges in Northern Ireland, necessarily diverting resources and operational delivery away from longer-term objectives in order to ensure an immediate and coordinated response to COVID. I'm sure you'll understand that we needed to do this, but that has not always been easy. The committee did recently have a detailed presentation from Karen Pearson and her team on the pathway to recovery, which highlighted the challenges that we face, and these challenges must be met. But it is also important to understand that the crisis is a driver and an accelerant of change. For example, COVID has led to a fundamental digital transformation in how our public services are delivered. People are working and innovating online, and they are finding new, more agile ways to deliver for our people. The Executive's building forward a consolidated recovery plan, members will know, was published on the 2nd of August. The plan is not about getting us back to where we were before, but about providing a foundation for economic health and societal renewal. This is an integrated recovery plan with 83 highly impactful interventions to be progressed over the next 24 months to deliver recovery for all our citizens under 4 strategic recovery accelerators. And these are sustainable economic development, green growth and sustainability, tackling inequalities and the health of our population. And we focused on interventions that will have tangible impacts within the next 6 months. And these are cross-cutting in nature, and that demonstrates the collaboration between departments, arm's length bodies and stakeholders, and also that are being funded. Actions focus on objectives such as targeting support to companies to drive innovation, stimulating the economy through green growth, increasing digital inclusion, and restoring and improving mental health services. The plan presents significant opportunities to achieve impact, which is greater than the sum of its parts, both in terms of what can be progressed and what can be delivered through cross-cutting departmental action. This represents an approach with an immense potential to transform public service delivery, and as such, we are hopeful that it will form a foundation for the achievement of longer-term outcomes. Mr. Chairman, if I can hand over to the Deputy First Minister, and then she will come back to me before we just conclude these opening remarks. So if I can hand over to the Deputy First Minister.
Thanks, and good afternoon to everybody on the committee. And just picked up, Chairman, that you are moving on to different pastures, so can I wish you well with all of that, and thank you for the constructive nature in which we've been able to work. As the First Minister said, we also have Dennis McMahon on the call, who's the new Permanent Secretary at TEO, and no doubt you will also have a good constructive working relationship as a committee with Dennis as our new Permanent Secretary. So we want to touch on a number of things, and thanks for the opportunity to briefly touch on them before we take questions from committee members. But as the committee will know, that managing our response to COVID alongside our recovery plan has really very much been our focus over recent months, and we've continued to steer a course through the pandemic. But I also think it's important, Chair, that we also reflect just on how far we've actually come in the last 6 months, not just as an executive or members of a legislative assembly, but certainly as society. When we last came in front of the committee back in April, our children and young people had only been back in the classroom for a number of days, and we were just starting to gradually lift some of the restrictions that were obviously there as a necessary way to suppress the virus, but it was really having a huge impact on all parts of our society. We were always very clear with you and with the wider public that a cautious and steady approach informed by the medical and scientific advice was the best way to keep moving forward on a pathway out of restrictions. And very much in line with that approach, we've been able to make more significant easements to the restrictions since that time. That includes things like more families and friends being able to get together, a fuller return to retail and hospitality, the resumption of sports and the arts sector, a return to events, to name a few. And just last week then, the Executive was also able to agree some further steps out of restrictions. So I think that's all very welcome progress, and I think it's crucially important that necessary steps are taken to minimise the risks that are associated with mixing in all these environments. So I think going forward, mitigations must go hand in hand with relaxations. So it's very much going to be based on a partnership approach. And there's been extensive engagement across all the sectors on implementing the appropriate mitigations. And I have to say, Chair, we've been very encouraged by the response that we've had to date across a whole wide range of areas. So work is now ongoing with the hospitality sector in particular to ensure that businesses and venues are prepared and equipped to put in place the recommended mitigation measures in advance of the relaxations taking place. So I think it's hugely important that we continue to take steps now which can, in time, become the foundation for the future, with safe, resilient communities, innovative and inclusive business models, green growth and sustainability, and a healthier population. I'll hand back to Paul. Yep.
Thank you. And turning, Mr. Chairman, to the United Kingdom's exit from the European Union and the implications of the Northern Ireland Protocol, junior ministers provided the committee with an update a few weeks ago, and it may be useful for us just to reiterate the position. So although the 5 parties in the executive have differing opinions on the merits of EU exit and of the protocol, we are united in our commitment to work together to achieve the best possible outcome for our citizens and businesses. We welcome the recent extensions to the grace periods. While these are only a temporary solution, it avoided a cliff edge for our businesses and provides the time and space for permanent solutions to be found. The proposals put forward by the UK government's command paper and the European Union's non-papers do not fully address the concerns of our business community. We therefore welcome the ongoing discussions between the UK government and the European Union around finding permanent solutions. As you'll be aware, we are expecting further developments later today and in the coming days. When details of any further proposed solutions are received, our officials will analyse how well these address the challenges that are faced by our businesses and citizens. As we have indicated many times, businesses here continue to call for certainty, simplicity and affordability. This means solutions must be long-term and workable and create the least possible disruptions to all our communities. It is not sufficient to continue to extend uncertainty with stopgap solutions. Without certainty about future requirements, our businesses will be unable to plan ahead, and this will impact on their investment and overall competitiveness, hinder their growth and have a negative effect on the overall health of our economy as we continue our recovery from the impacts of COVID-19. Businesses have also highlighted the need that they need time to implement any agreed solutions. I'll hand back to the Deputy Minister.
Yeah, again, I do think it's important to recognise that the executive, whilst we all have different views on the issue of Brexit, I think it's united in our pursuit of trying to resolve issues. So it's essential that we collectively recognise, I suppose, the complexity and the cross-cut nature of many of the factors that are impacting on the local economy as a result of Brexit. And I think we need to acknowledge and plan for any potential solution that might work for one sector, not having unintended consequences and detrimental impact on another sector. So it's for this reason, I think it's important that there is an enhanced engagement by all stakeholders on the development of solutions with both the executive and our local businesses, so that we can ensure that all parties and sectors are fully aware of all the impacts that any solutions proposed are going to work in practice for our communities.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, for me, and certainly not least, we would welcome the chance just to update you on our continuing commitment to victims and survivors. And I know it is an area on which the committee has focused, and rightly so, given the importance of the issues. The strategy, as originally conceived, had a 10-year time frame, and that ended in 2019. In November of that year, the head of the Civil Service approved an extension of the strategy for a period of 2 years, with the option to review or extend for a short period. So we are considering an additional extension, and this is to allow time for the new strategy to be developed. And in doing so, we are aware of the impact which this strategy will have on people, families and communities. So therefore, we are determined to get the strategy right. In the meantime, and while this is being developed, can I assure the committee that we are continuing to focus on delivery. We can assure the committee that the new strategy will be victim-centred, and it will be developed by TEO in cooperation with the Victims and Survivors Service, the Commission for Victims and Survivors, and a variety of stakeholders, including, of course, those funded groups and individual victims and survivors. So the process will take place in 3 separate phases. Phase 1, of which is almost complete, examines the co-design process, CVS research and relevant evaluations. This is also identifying emerging themes and patterns. The final event in this phase is due to take place in October. The second phase will explore the themes and patterns through the establishment of a series of co-design groups, and we hope to invite individual victims and survivors, groups and relevant stakeholders to sit on these groups. And the intention is that the working groups will identify key areas for inclusion in the new strategy. The third phase will result in a draft new strategy and public consultation. It is anticipated that this will be developed and ready for consultation by July 2022. And I'll ask the Deputy First Minister to close our opening remarks.
Thanks. And again, just to come to a conclusion, I suppose we recognise that there continues to be a real need for support for bereaved victims and survivors. And until recently, the VSS provided self-directed assistance payments and health and wellbeing support to bereaved individuals who had registered with them before the 31st of March 2017. We're pleased, therefore, that the payment scheme for bereaved victims administered by the VSS reopened again in April 2021. And alongside this, the Victims Payment Scheme for Permanent Disablement opened on the 31st of August, and to date there's been 691 applicants to that scheme. The first cases have already been passed through for medical assessment after eligibility assessment by the board. Chair, following a presentation at the committee last week by the Chief Executive of the Commission for Victims and Survivors, you had wrote to us regarding the recruitment of a new Commissioner for Victims and Survivors. So just to give you an update, obviously the closing date for the applications for the post is this Friday, the 15th of October, and interviews will commence week beginning Monday the 15th. So we acknowledge firstly that this appointment has taken a bit of time to get to a conclusion. However, it's a hugely important post, and it was really important that we approached it in the right way. So we're now on track to see a new Commissioner announced in the next 3 months, and they will have a key contribution to make as we shape the next strategy for victims and survivors. They'll also have a very central role in continuing to develop services for victims and survivors. Another key role for the Commissioner will obviously be working to ensure that the new payment scheme delivers in the best way possible. Until this appointment's made, the Commission's Chief Executive Officer, as designated accounting officer, has the authority to maintain the day-to-day running of the Commission, ensuring relevant approved business plan targets are progressed also in the interim. I just want to maybe just finish on this point that there's been much more achieved than what we can fit into a short presentation with the committee. We have come through a very challenging time throughout the pandemic, and it's hard to cover all of that in sort of a short period of time, but just to cover a few other things that we have been dealing with. Communities in Transition programme has seen the development of 34 programmes and a strong focus on participatory design with communities. 80,000 people have participated in 508 of our urban villages projects with solid good relations outcomes. A senior resource to lead on work on the violence against women and girls strategy has been appointed, and that's going to support us in tackling these critical and cross-cutting issues. As part of the COVID response in our department, we made £1.2 million available to support travel agents through a very difficult period. We've increased the Minority Ethnic Development Fund and Crisis Fund and undertaken a review of racial equality legislation. Awards of £28 million have been made so far to the victims and survivors of historical abuse. And last week, and I know all members will be very alert to this, last week we received a report which has given hope to survivors of mother and baby homes and Magdalen laundries, and we're committed to turning around a response to that very shortly. And since our last appearance in front of the committee, we've also taken part in a plenary meeting of the North-South Ministerial Council, and the former First Minister and I had hosted a meeting of the British Irish Council in Fermanagh. So these provided a chance to discuss key issues and share knowledge and information, share challenges and opportunities to benefit all of our people. So I hope you find that helpful, Chair, and we'll now hand back to yourself and your committee members.
Okay, thank you very much for the update on the work that has taken place. We appreciate getting all of that information on some of the areas that we certainly have been interested in and that we've written to you about for updates. So it's good to get the update from them and where they are. I appreciate it has been with circumstances. I think quite a number of months from you were with us, so there will have been a fair bit of work that will have taken place. So hopefully it will not be as long to the next time that you're with the committee to give the update, and there'll be less that will have been done in the time in between. But I think the really important thing for these meetings is the opportunity to get clarification. And something that I was interested in getting clarification in was just how the ruling that we got from the High Court yesterday, that the snubbing of the North-South Ministerial Council meetings was unlawful by the DUP members. And I noted yesterday that the First Minister had said about the Peace Plus funding that it had a particular theme that relates to health and associated funding. So he's signed off that that meeting should also take place subject to the Deputy First Minister approving that through urgent procedure. Now, members of the DUP in this committee and in other places have been telling us that there was no need for any signing off in terms of the nearly £1 billion that was to come through the Peace Plus. But I think that what we heard yesterday was that that is actually now changed, that it does require to be signed off, which is what some of us in this committee have been saying all along, because that funding will put people's jobs and people's livelihoods and communities in peril and in danger, because the good work wouldn't be able to take place. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Deputy First Minister, could you give us an update as to what you think your view of that attendance is, and maybe let us know who it is that's going to attend the meeting with regard to Peace Plus?
Okay, Chair, thank you for that. I mean, this is something that I have been vocal on both in the floor of the Assembly and publicly. I mean, I think that the inaction of the DUP to nominate ministers to the North-South Ministerial Council not only undermines our politics and the fact that we have three component parts of our politics here: the relationships in the North itself, within the Executive itself, our North-South relations and our East-West relations, and all those things are interdependent and one doesn't work without the other. So I think that I welcome the ruling by the courts this week. It shouldn't have to be that way, but I do welcome the ruling by the courts, and I encourage the DUP ministers who have boycotted our North-South Ministerial Council meetings just to get on with doing their job and get back to business. There was an immediate risk that was identified, as I said, that I have spoken about, and that was the £1 billion programme. And that's a huge programme that makes, as you've identified yourself, Chair, enormous contribution to our local economy, to our local community and voluntary sector, across a whole range of areas where we need this much needed investment. Conor Murphy was, as the Finance Minister, brought those papers to the Executive and did seek clearance. However, that hadn't happened until yesterday evening. This programme does need to go to a North-South Ministerial meeting. There will be a health sectoral meeting, and Conor has obviously welcomed the agreement to now progress the Peace Plus programme. That the threat by the DUP to undermine this programme has now been removed. But at the request of the Finance Minister, the Joint Head of Government, myself and Paul have now agreed that Minister for Health will bring that paper and just speak to that paper at the health sectoral meeting, which is scheduled for the 14th of October. So that's tomorrow. So that's £1 billion fund, which will support projects, as I said, for young people, for health initiatives, for environmental programmes, and for job creation. So I hope that this progress on the Peace Plus marks an end to the DUP's damaging and illegal boycott of the North-South Ministerial Council.
I suppose you're saying, Deputy First Minister, that it'll be Minister Swan that's going to attend that meeting tomorrow to deal with something that is, I suppose, ultimately a responsibility of the Executive Office. Is that convenient, First Minister, that it's an Ulster Unionist Minister that's going, and has that been done just to save face that you've got it completely wrong in the DUP?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of the meeting that's taking place on Thursday, it's in line with our party's position whenever it came to matters of health. And as I indicated, and you rightly and accurately reflected on what I said in the chamber yesterday, the Peace Plus funding does have very significant amounts of monies whenever it comes to collaboration around health, and therefore, in line with our party position on that, we have cleared the paper for the Peace Plus through the urgent procedure mechanism and the North-South meeting. I have sanctioned, it wouldn't have been able to take place without my approval of the agenda, the date and the attendees taking place. So the fact that it's Robin Swan that is going to be the minister that is there that does not negate the responsibility that I have as First Minister to sanction that meeting, and therefore making it an officially scheduled meeting of a North-South body taking place.
That almost sounded like, yes, we got it wrong and we've rectified it, but I don't think it was exactly the same words that we're choosing for that. If I could move on, in terms of a question that I had asked in the House earlier in the week about at the NSMC statement on Monday, I had asked about the Infrastructure Commission, which is one of the 83 areas of the Executive's COVID recovery plan. Now, the Deputy First Minister said that she supported the Commission, but didn't really answer my question. So I'm going to have a go see if you could answer it for me, First Minister. And that is that this Commission has been agreed by the Executive. Can we get that confirmed? And could you confirm for us when that will be progressed so that that Infrastructure Commission can be established?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So whenever it comes to the issue around this Infrastructure Commission, it is one of the areas contained within the COVID recovery plan that the Executive did sign off on. And what now is very important is to ensure that in the establishment of such a body, that we look at what we're currently doing and what then this commission would look like. So we have signed off within the Executive Office for our Permanent Secretary to take forward a piece of work to engage with permanent secretaries and other departments in order to carry out that very assessment, and then that will provide advice to us within the Executive Office as to what the next steps would be. Contained within the report around the Infrastructure Commission, there was a very clear recommendation that the Executive Office would be the sponsoring department for such an Infrastructure Commission to be established, and therefore it's vitally important that the Executive Office it has that assessment carried out in terms of proceeding to the next steps of this process. So that's a piece of work that I've approved in terms of now moving forward for our Permanent Secretary to lead on.
Well, it's certainly welcome that it's proceeding, and let's hope that it can be brought about very quickly so that work can continue for infrastructure. Finally, for myself, Minister O'Neill, your counterpart in the Executive Office got very touchy at Executive Office questions on Monday regarding the issue of vaccinations. He compared COVID, which is a highly transmittable virus, and the vaccination of it as akin to taking medicines for depression, heart disease and cancer, which are not transmittable. Now, with that in mind, the public want to see leadership, and they need to know that they can trust the Executive. And when they see the First Minister getting so rattled in the chamber about vaccines and vaccine certificates, it's really going to be very difficult for the public to have a great deal of faith in that. So if I could ask maybe just of the Deputy First Minister, do you think it's important that we send out a clear message that everybody that possibly can takes the vaccine so that we can help our health service?
Yes, I of course I do. I think that the vaccine remains our best defence against this virus, and whilst we've made huge strides forward, and I wanted to make that clear from the outset, we still have a way to go. We obviously have a significant programme of vaccination being rolled out. That's an ongoing thing. We're now getting into the stage of booster vaccines. So certainly I encourage all those to take up the vaccine. It is the difference between life and death. It is the difference between hospitalisation or not. It's the difference between just your overall longer term impact of if you did happen to contract COVID. So it is still our message that we encourage everybody to take up the vaccines, and it is crucially important in the time ahead, particularly as we move from a regulatory space into a guidance space, that we are at one on message. Not just myself or any other executive minister. It's actually all parties and all colleagues across the Assembly chamber. It's really important that we speak with one message, and I think on the issue of vaccines, it's crucially important that we make it clear that this is our best defence, and it still remains where all our attention should be focused.
But do you think that it's appropriate leadership to hide if you've taken the vaccine or not?
Well, you have the First Minister on the meeting, Chair. I suggest that you put the question to him, given that it's targeted at him and his party. I'm very clear around, and I've stated publicly that I have taken the vaccine. Our parties, all our representatives in the chamber have taken the vaccine. But the consistent public message is, please take the vaccine if you can take it, because it's the best defence that you have.
Is there anything that you want to add from Monday, First Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And can I just echo what the Deputy First Minister has said in terms of encouraging people to take up the vaccine. Indeed, that is what I said in the Assembly chamber on Monday when one of your colleagues asked about this. I indicated very much that I wish people who haven't received the vaccine would do so. But the point that was being made is that we have a long established position where, when it comes to people's private health and medication and things that they would receive, that's exactly what it should be. It should be private. Of course, if you're in your GP's practice, should a doctor ask you about it, that's perfectly reasonable. Whenever you're trying to enter events and so on, we're encouraging businesses to provide proof of vaccination. But what I don't believe is acceptable is what happened on Monday, where a political colleague is demanding to know what other political colleagues have received or not whenever it comes to their own healthcare. I don't think that is appropriate, and I do think, as I have indicated, you, Mr. Chairman, have talked about, is it right for people to hide on this issue or not? We do need to be careful that we don't get into some kind of shaming culture around this, because I have engaged with constituents and members of society right across Northern Ireland who, for a number of reasons, haven't taken the vaccine. Some of that is medical reason. Some of them have a phobia in respect of receiving a vaccine. Some may have ethical reasons around that. And I don't think it is actually helpful to deploy those kind of coercive shaming type tactics. And I certainly haven't heard that approach being used by those within the medical and scientific profession or the Department of Health. When it comes to doing it, I do think it's wrong to politicise whether or not somebody has been vaccinated in the way in which your colleague did on Monday.
Well, I think the point that I was making, First Minister, is that it's about that leadership. If we're asking people that can take the vaccine to take it, and if we're advising that various establishments check that people have the vaccine before they come in, then I don't think that it's too far a stretch to say that those representatives that are making the decision and can take the vaccine would detail that they have done that. To me, I see that as leadership. I have been part of the decision makings up in Stormont here in this House, and I'm happy to say that I've taken the vaccine. I don't think there's any shame in saying that, but I hope that we can continue to send out a clear message that everybody that should take the vaccine so that they can provide the maximum safety within our community, and especially to our health service, because we only need to look at the figures that are being released from the health service about the numbers of people that are in hospital and also in ICU that are unvaccinated. It's becoming quite clear that is where some of the danger lies, and we need to try and spread out as much message as possible to people to take the vaccine so that we can protect them, but protect the health service as well. So I hope that message can continue to be sent out. I'm going to open up the questions now to members, and as would be expected with the gap from yourselves coming to us, there's a full list of members wishing to ask questions, and I'm going to pass first to the Deputy Chair of the Committee who's online, to John Stewart, please.
Always forget to hit unmute. Thank you, Chair. Deputy First Minister, thanks for your time so far this morning, for your answers to the Chair. I just want to start by following off on the last point that Colin's making just around the vaccine, etc. I mean, we've come so far, as you'll agree. I think collectively we have done a lot and been through a lot in the last 16, 18 months. And no more thanks to the NHS and the unbelievable work they've done. In terms of political responsibility, though, I do think there is an onus on us to call out those within society who are not only COVID deniers but anti-vaxxers. And I do feel at times that there is maybe some leeway being given to those on the floor or else on social media who are elected, who are giving dog whistling and giving credence to some of these anti-vaxxers. I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on that and whether they should be called out by political leaders and not give those people the space to spread this malicious nonsense.
I'm happy to take that, John. Thanks for your question. I mean, I agree with you. It's so important that we keep promoting the issue of the vaccine uptake, and we're really going out of our way to try to reach out to people, and it's been made very easy to get your vaccine, whether that's through your community pharmacy, through your GP, pop-up clinics. We've saw establishments using their premises, all innovative ways in which to try to reach people. We're particularly finding it more challenging for the younger cohort, and all we can do is just keep trying to attract people by giving them the right information. So those people that promote the anti-vaccination, the anti-COVID message, that's bad for your health. I mean, that's misinformation. And one of our biggest challenges throughout the pandemic has been the issue of misinformation. So it's important that we do take it head on, tackle it head on, dismiss it where it's wrong, and actually then provide appropriate and correct information. So I would encourage people to take your information from the appropriate places, the Public Health Agency, the Department of Health information systems, and our own information systems. Let's not listen, or let's drown out actually as much as we can the anti-vaccination, anti-COVID sort of messengers.
Thanks for that.
John, just to echo what the Deputy First Minister said on that, the Executive Office very much as part of the communication strategy is rolling out how the theme is every vaccination brings us closer together, and that's on a whole range of platforms. And the Executive Office, working closely with the Department of Health, has identified what are the best messages and how do we effectively communicate that. And there's also a dedicated section around myth busting whenever it comes to the vaccine. So one area, for example, that I know, speaking to people initially, there was controversy over the development of AstraZeneca in respect of fetal cell lines. The Pfizer vaccine is synthetically developed. There is no fetal cell line. So if that was an issue for people when it came to one particular vaccine, there are other vaccines of which we are categorically able to say, that is not and has not been developed on the basis of aborted fetal cell lines, for example, and that should help to overcome some ethical issues that some people may have. And that, I know that was an issue at the very start of this programme. So I agree with what's been said. The development of the vaccine, its rollout, that is by far the most effective tool in terms of getting us to where we've now got to. And as we enter in to that autumn and winter period, and we intend to launch our contingency plan next week, at the heart of that plan will be the next phase of that booster programme for those that are in that over 50 category and vulnerable, and trying to make sure that we have as high a level as possible. And the vaccination programme is going to have a central component part in that whenever we launch it next week.
Okay, thanks, First Minister. You talk about where we've got to. Like many of the elected reps probably, or maybe I'm just quite sad, I have the executive pathway restrictions document pinned right on the wall, and I was ticking them off as we went along and we hit each of those milestones. I couldn't quite hear you whenever you were giving your contribution earlier. Is that still a live document, or has that been left off now? And when you're looking at easing of restrictions, it's more of on an ad hoc basis. Does that document still play a role, and how are we progressing out of the restrictions in terms of the strategy?
Yes, well, I think in terms of the pathway document, you're right to highlight that we've had around 40 easements from July to where we are today, and when we get to the end of October, there will be 3 areas which will still be in a regulatory format, whilst others will have moved out of regulations. There will still be guidance associated with that. So in some of those areas, the pathway has been completed. We're at the end point in terms of what was the various phases for us to do that. When we launch our autumn-winter contingency plan, that will provide a more holistic picture as to where we now are currently, and the next phase that'll take us through that autumn-winter period. That the document that will be the more authentic document as the key reference point. It will be that contingency plan whenever it's published next week.
Okay, thanks for that. Just another point, but I suppose related. I asked you this question yesterday, First Minister, in the Chamber, and you said you're an optimist, and I am, despite being an MLA in Stormont for the last couple of years, I still remain optimistic, and I think that we're all in this for the right reasons. But given that we're heading into the winter, and you have both outlined many of the important pieces of work that are being carried out by your department, and the fuel crisis and the social crisis and health crisis and everything that we're in, it is imperative that the institutions remain up and running so that we can supply the security and the political stability for Northern Ireland. What are you doing together to ensure that stability? And do you both agree that we do need to see those protections in place, committed in NDNA, to ensure that ministers can remain in place if, in the terrible event, Stormont does come down through political action?
Yes, John. Like I had a meeting just even this morning, and Junior Minister Kearney was there with me with Citibank, and they referenced the need for stability in terms of ongoing investment and a company that operates on a global scale. When they're talking about where to move their money within their organisation, and they're operating out of over 90 different countries, they need to make sure that when they're going to their investors in the likes of New York, that they can say there is political stability to justify and to give confidence around that. So those points that you've made are well made, and I would add to it the very extensive legislative programme that the Assembly has to get through before the end of this mandate. I very much want to see the mandate completed, not just for executive business, but I myself have a private member's bill which Christopher Stalford has now taken over, and I really don't want to see it fall. And it's in that context that I very much want to see a satisfactory outcome over the next number of weeks. And obviously the EU will publish their proposals later on this evening, and the UK government will then be engaging over the next number of weeks to see if we can find a resolution. And I said it in my opening remarks, for political stability and indeed for the wider business environment that we're operating in, we need to have a permanent solution, and that's what we need to get at the end of the next number of weeks. And I hope we get to the position where the institutions are able to keep operating. I don't want to spend this meeting rehearsing the position that my party and I have articulated now publicly as to why we've got to where we've got to as a result of the protocol. And what we want is the UK government to honour its commitment, the New Decade New Approach, which was that we should be part of the internal market of the United Kingdom without those east-west barriers. Let us collectively put our shoulders to the wheel, so to speak, and really push for a satisfactory outcome over the next number of weeks.
Okay, I'm sure you wouldn't disagree with that, Deputy First Minister.
Well, of course, I want to see a satisfactory action or outcome, but I think it's really, really important, and I do concur around the point that you made around stability and certainty, and that's what the public want and deserve. And that takes us all, of course, to work together. I'm here because I want to work with the other parties. I want to be able to provide that stability and certainty in the way forward. I want to be able to work with others when it comes to delivering public services, whenever it comes to creating new and better jobs, whenever it comes to defending our health service. But the reality is that one party in the executive is holding everybody else to ransom and is threatening the stability and certainty of our politics. And I think you have to, I suppose, if you want to diagnose a problem, you have to diagnose it properly. And I think that those that are involved in threatening the stability of our institutions for their own party interests or for their own electoral interests, I think shame on them, whilst the rest of us are trying to work together. So I do welcome the fact that today we will see a publication of proposals by the EU side, who clearly have engaged, clearly have listened to stakeholders here, and that's crucially important. Let's listen to the people that are involved and who found some of this challenging in terms of the lateness of the deal that was struck, trying to find new ways of working, a new Brexit, a new trading reality that was always going to come about as a result of Brexit. So what I hope that, or what I'm encouraged, and obviously we're yet to see the proposals, but I'm encouraged from what I've been briefed in terms of what we can expect from the EU side today. I think it will provide that stability and certainty. I'm not encouraged, maybe is a better way to put it, by what I've heard from the British government this week, in particular from David Frost, dialing up the rhetoric, speaking about new red lines and the European Court of Justice, for example. That doesn't bode well or create good mood music in order to try and find solutions, which is what the public want us to find. So I'll play my part in that, and I will encourage both sides in terms of the British government and the EU to honour the agreement that was made, which was signed up to by both sides, including the British government. It signed up to the withdrawal agreement and the protocol. We now expect to see that implemented, and we expect that, or I hope, that both sides can enter into the next number of weeks with a determination to come out the other side with an agreement that provides the certainty and stability which you referred to in your initial question.
Okay, one last point, and it'll be remiss of me not to point this out as well, though. Much of the legislative agenda and the important work that's going on now probably could have been achieved in the 3 years from 2017 to 2020 had we had a government then, so I don't think anybody's completely blameless in this, but I'm busting to see the stability this country needs. As a final point, given that what we've got to now, and given the way the Executive Office operates and the role of Deputy First Minister and First Minister, do you agree that the time has now come to see the office of the Joint First Minister created? And if that is the case, would you commit to do that? That's me finished.
Could offer that to any one of the Joint First Ministers there, please.
Yes, I'm more than happy to take that question, and thanks, John, for the commentary. And just to say, I concur with you. I'm bursting to see the same stability that you're referring to. So that takes us all. That takes collective effort, including the effort of your party, because it was your party that are still in the ground that we can't have an Irish Language Act, we shouldn't legislate for Irish language. So let's work together to make this a more inclusive society. Let's work together to ensure that we build a better future for all of our young people. Let's work together to create better jobs. Let's work together to improve people's lot in life. So I'm certainly up for that, and I look forward to working with you in that vein. I think it's really interesting that we're having a conversation around changing the title of the office at a time whenever there's a prospect of a potential Nationalist First Minister. It was good enough 23 years ago to have this title. It was good enough 5 years ago whenever Martin McGuinness first mooted a change. So why is it not good enough today? It nearly stinks of nationalists need not apply, and that's not good enough. There's no going back to that era. We're only going forward, and that's forward with progression, progressive outlook on society, working together. I'm up for that. But as things stand today, I am the joint head of government. I am the joint First Minister. That doesn't change, and it'll be the public. Ultimately, it'll be the public, the wider electorate, that'll decide who they want to return as the largest party, and therefore who will go into the office of First and Deputy First Minister.
Thanks for that, Deputy First Minister. That was not my intention with this. It's been an issue that has been on the cards for quite some time, and many parties and elected representatives have been calling you that exact title of Joint First Minister, so that was the reason for it. First Minister, do you want to offer anything on this before?
Yes, well, thank you, John, for the question. And in respect of stability, that is what I want. And from I've taken up this role as the First Minister, I can point to a whole series of issues that were unlocked, that had been stuck within the executive around a legislative programme that we needed to take forward. I think there's at least 6 or if not 7 different bills which have now flowed out of the executive, and I continue to seek to have a smooth working executive whilst having to manage the macro environment which is buffeting this executive, and that is at a UK government level. It's with the European Union in respect of the protocol, so there are macro elements here which is creating a lot of turbulence, and I very much see my role as trying to then navigate the day-to-day bread and butter issues that affect all of our people through the executive in a mature and a professional manner, and that's the approach that I've taken to the role that I have. And I want to see that stability going forward, but we are a little bit in danger, and I don't want this committee to end up in a row, but there's a little bit of revisionism around people threatening these institutions. It was only at my appointment when one party was threatening not to reappoint on the basis of a narrow sectional interest, and that would have created huge instability and the collapse of these institutions had there not been a Deputy First Minister appointed. And so I think we need just to be careful as to how people are trying to present themselves here as being the custodians of stability of these institutions, because that certainly wasn't the case earlier this year. Listen, the titles of this office emanate from the Belfast Agreement, and ultimately it's for the people to decide. I make no apology that as a unionist I want to have a First Minister holding this position which is pro-union, because I think that's important internationally and within our place in the United Kingdom. But it'll be for the public to decide as to who holds this office. I have every confidence that whenever it comes to the election, whenever that is, that the people of Northern Ireland will want to have its pro-union majority reflected in the office holder of this position in terms of First Minister. And I welcome the fact that for those who didn't regard the position as being important because they refer to the joint First Minister, clearly it is very important, otherwise we wouldn't have the issue being made the way that it is being made by Nationalists and Republicans.
Okay, thank you both for your time. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think given the number of issues that people are facing in terms of the economy and infrastructure and education, that we've spent about 10 minutes bickering about a title just says very, very much about those that participated in that bickering. So I think we should move on if we can. Maybe if I could ask yourself, Trevor, next few questions from the room here.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to the First and Deputy for attending today. I don't want to extend the bickering, but I do want to ask you about the report on flags, identity, culture and tradition. The FIC report. We've had discussion about this through Assembly questions and so on. And it's fairly obvious that one side of the Executive Office is quite happy to see this report released. On the other side, namely your own, Paul, is unhappy to see it released. This saga's been going on now, I think, for about 18 months, and it's with a second working group, and no sign of any white smoke. So can I ask you, what's holding it up? That's to yourself, First Minister, probably.
Yes, thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will answer the questions that members of the committee put to me. It wasn't me, Mr. Chairman, who raised the issue of the titles of this office in my opening remarks. In respect of the issue around FICT, I did agree at the executive meeting, I think it was on the 23rd of September, that report should be published. And indeed, in advance of this committee meeting, I also authorised from this side of the office for the committee to receive a copy of that. I think it's the least that we should expect that the scrutiny committee has a copy of that report, but I want to see it released into the public domain. And I have provided that approval at the executive meeting on the 23rd of September. So there's no hold up on my part in having that report published and made available to the public.
Well, I think First Minister, that's round about the time when you answered an Assembly question from me, a written question, which really stonewalled the issue, and there was no indication then that there was imminent possibility of release. So what has changed? When are we going to see this report, this committee? 23rd of September is 3 or 4 weeks past, you know?
Yes, and it's recorded in the minutes of that executive meeting where I give my approval for it to be published. I have no issue with the report being made publicly available. It was paid for by the taxpayer. The taxpayer should see it, and I am more than happy for it to be put into the public domain. I'm more than happy for this committee to get a copy of it, but to me it should be in the public domain. And I have no issue in having that made publicly available to members of the committee or indeed wider society. So there's no issue on my part.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Can I ask a Deputy First Minister any comment about the situation?
Yes, Trevor, thanks. And I know you're consistent on asking about this, and rightly so. I mean, I want to see the publication of the report, but where I think where I know the difference is, I also want to see it published in its entirety, but I want to see the accompanying implementation report. So how are we going to turn around and deliver on the things that have been asked in the report? So the previous First Minister from the DUP had agreed that we would have the publication of the report and we would have the implementation response also. This current DUP First Minister has not got that same view. So the blockage doesn't lie with me, but certainly that's where I would want us to get to as quickly as possible. So if we get the publication of the report, let's also have the implementation plan.
So let me get this straight, Chair, if you don't mind. The First Minister says that the report can be published. There's no issue with that. Does that mean, back to yourself, First Minister, that you're objecting to the publication of the implementation report that should accompany the actual report?
The issue there, Trevor, is that there's an ongoing piece of work that the junior ministers are involved in whenever it comes to considering what that report had within the recommendations, and that is an ongoing piece of work. I don't believe that ongoing piece of work should be a precondition to the report being made publicly available. So whilst the junior ministers continue to examine the report, engage around the report, the report should be put into the public domain and it should be provided to the committee. So again, that's the basis I have approved it. It's in the executive minute where I have approved for the report to be published and allow the junior ministers and the working group that's involved in this to continue to engage in it. We also would get the benefit of having the public reaction to that report. We would get the benefit of all Assembly members in the Assembly being able to react to what is contained within that report. And all of that would be very helpful to feed in to the consideration of it, which the junior ministers are involved in.
Okay, thanks for that, Chair. I've just got one more, but it's not particularly contentious, so maybe we'll get some agreement here. I've been asked by a group involved in traditional music to find out from you, to get your comments about the remit of the Office of Cultural Identity and Expression. That's it.
So obviously we hope to see this legislation progress through the course of this month. That was the commitment that was made by Brandon Lewis on behalf of the British Government. We believe that at this stage, certainly things are on target to have that legislation progressed, and then I hope that we'll be able to talk at length around once you have that principal legislation through, then we're able to talk at length around the functions of the office, where it fits in, where groups like the traditional music industry and individuals involved in that can fit into all of that. I think it'll be a very positive thing for all to promote culture, language, to promote all of our interests and how we can actually do things far more positively together. So I hope to see progress in that, Trevor, over the course of this month, before the end of this month.
Thank you, Trevor. And obviously that the Office of Cultural Identity, that was something that was very important to my party whenever there was discussions around New Decade, New Approach, because not just traditional music, but we very much recognise, for example, the faith community has a huge role to play in our society, and wanting to ensure that there is a voice there for the very divergent cultural expressions that we do have. So at the point in which that office is created, there'll be a very important role, not just when it comes to traditional music being considered, but the wider aspects which that office was going to have to take into account whenever it gets established.
Yes, thanks for that. I mean, traditional music affects both sides of the community, if you have to talk in those terms. Can I ask you what community or stakeholder engagement will take place or already has taken place around the remit of this office?
So we expect that the legislation will be the 3 bills. So if you remember, there's 3 bills that will run together and they will be laid in Westminster before the end of this month. And then, Trevor, there will be a lot of engagement to be had around the office, the makeup of the office, the structure of the offices, the commissioners where they're appropriate, and there's a director for the Office of Culture and Identity. And I think that's where you'll see a lot more stakeholder engagement. So I'm happy to provide you with more information just whenever we see the legislation go through, and then we'll move on to that next phase. But we'll be able to come back and talk to the committee at length, actually, I think, and be more appropriate to answer a lot of those questions that you're raising today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's hope that one of the first tasks of that culture department isn't to publish a flags report with an implementation response, or else they'll be in for a very dodgy start to their work. Could I ask for Pat next, please?
Thank you, Chair. And could I ask you both if the DAERA Minister has corresponded with you to, as he's required to do, to tell you whether or not he'll be attending the NSMC meeting on Friday on the environment and marine aquaculture?
So you're right that is the next meeting, and no, we've had no correspondence from the DAERA Minister to advise that he or his reason for not attending. So I have also written to my counterpart in my office, to Paul, to ask, was it his duty now to nominate another Unionist Minister to attend, and I have to receive a response on that yet.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Pat, for the question. Again, I indicated in the Assembly in response to quite a number of questions when is a scheduled meeting a scheduled meeting? And whilst the Secretariat, may suggest dates for meetings to take place of North-South bodies, a scheduled meeting only becomes such whenever the Executive Office has signed off on that to be an official meeting with an agreed agenda, the date of that being agreed. So there is no scheduled meeting by which Minister Poots has to attend, because until such a meeting becomes officially sanctioned by the Executive Office, as I outlined yesterday, it's only at that point the Minister would be required to attend, and there isn't a scheduled meeting for Friday, which I have approved by way of the agenda or the date or the attendees.
Well, that's interesting, Paul, because the onus is on you to nominate another unionist minister if there's going to be a no-show from the DAERA minister. And then it's the responsibility of both yourself and the Deputy First Minister to jointly approve the agenda and papers for that meeting. And are you going to do that for the meeting this Friday?
Well, Pat, there isn't a no-show by the Minister for Agriculture, because there isn't a show. Unless the Executive Office agrees the agenda and the date and the attendee, it's only at that point that I would need to nominate a replacement because a minister was unavailable to participate in that meeting.
Okay, let's take a step back, Paul. There's the minister who is supposed to be attending a meeting must correspond with you and the Deputy First Minister to indicate whether or not he is attending the meeting. Is that not right?
Procedurally, whenever there is a meeting scheduled, I think that is the correct process, but there hasn't been a scheduled meeting. It only becomes scheduled on the basis on which I outlined in the Assembly yesterday, and that I've just repeated to your questions.
Okay, so if there's a meeting penciled in the diary, the meeting on Friday, do you agree that there's a meeting penciled in for Friday?
No, I don't.
So there's no meeting on Friday? There's not supposed to be a meeting on Friday?
No, there hasn't been ministerial sign-off for a meeting to take place on Friday. So whilst provisional dates may be suggested by Secretariat and until there is ministerial sign-off, that is when it becomes a scheduled meeting. So there isn't a meeting penciled in that respect of a scheduled meeting on Friday, and any ministers that show up are showing up to a meeting which is not officially scheduled. For it to become an officially scheduled meeting requires the Executive Office, and therefore me, to sign off on the agenda, the date and the attending minister, and that has happened in respect of the meeting on Thursday, which Robin Swan is attending, and that has been the process for that meeting. No such process has followed on Friday, so therefore there will not be a no-show on Friday by Minister Poots, because there hasn't been a scheduled meeting to take place on Friday.
Why would ministers notify the Executive if there's not going to be a meeting? I mean, I've listened to this. This is the second time I've had to listen to this now. You said the same in the chamber the other day. You know, obviously you had one of your members lined up to ask a question about scheduling. Let's be clear. Walk us through the process there, Paul, about how these meetings are organised and why the Justice Schofield has judged that the actions of the DUP ministers in boycotting these meetings are unlawful. Walk us through that process.
Well, Minister Poots hasn't communicated with the Executive Office.
Has he not a responsibility to do so?
No, because there hasn't been a scheduled meeting for the reasons that I've just outlined. And I think, as I said yesterday, part of the judgment that I have been able to read talked about those seeking to take political advantage of the court processes. I just feel that the best way to resolve the wider issues that we face is through a political resolution. And I would just urge people...
No, Paul, I don't want a political lecture on this. Have Ministers Mullen and Kearney notified the First and Deputy First Ministers, that they will be attending a meeting on Friday as accompanying ministers?
I don't know the answer to that.
You don't know?
They may well.
You don't know?
They may well have done, but until there is an officially scheduled
No,
meeting.
sorry, you
and
don't
I've
know what
outlined
they
the
may well
reasons as
have
to
done.
why
Which
it's
is it?
scheduled.
Okay, let's. I think we need
With
to.
respect, Pat, you can't change the facts around what this meeting is about. I appreciate it doesn't suit the narrative that you're wanting to portray.
We're asking a simple question. If other ministers have notified the First and Deputy First Ministers that they will be going to a meeting on Friday?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm repeating now.
Why do you not know the answer?
Well, I'm repeating at considerable length. Now, it is somewhat immaterial if Minister Mallon and others have notified the Executive Office that they intend to attend a meeting until it becomes an officially scheduled meeting. There is no such meeting to take place on Friday. The only scheduled meeting that has been sanctioned by the Executive Office is the one in respect of health. And I outlined in the Assembly the process for that. Once a meeting is scheduled, then other executive colleagues are notified of it, and we also notify the Speaker of the Assembly that a meeting has been notified. The other executive colleagues have not been notified about the meeting on Friday, and the Speaker of the Assembly has not been notified about the meeting on Friday because there is no officially scheduled meeting to take place on Friday, and any minister that shows up at that is doing it for purely political presentational purposes.
So 2 other ministers have notified the First and Deputy First Minister that they'll be attending a meeting on Friday, but there is no meeting.
Correct, Pat.
Come on, Paul.
Paul, correct, Pat.
Paul,
Your
actions have been judged as being unlawful. You're the First Minister. You have a responsibility to nominate another Unionist minister. When are you going to start upholding the law?
Well, Pat, I always uphold the law, and I don't want this meeting to degenerate into whose credentials upholds the laws within these political institutions, because I think the public will be very ably to discern for themselves which party has the track record of upholding the law. I want these political institutions to work. The resolution to these issues aren't to be found through legal recourse, and I would encourage people to resist the temptation on that, but put their energy into finding a political resolution, and that is going to be the best way forward for the stability of these institutions.
Okay, I want to move on to another subject. The British Brexit Minister last week said that increasing North-South trade was a problem that needed to be solved. And that's far removed from the assessment of farmers, manufacturers and business leaders in our community here today. And I'd just like to ask, given the comments of David Frost yesterday, is that not an indication, or does it not expose the cynical and duplicitous nature of the British government in relation to the protocol? And that's for both ministers. Thanks.
Well,
Thanks,
you, Pat.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, sorry, Michelle, do you want to come in? Sure, and then I can come back.
Well, just to say, to concur with you, Pat, I mean, I do think that it draws into question the motivation for the British government's approach. So at a time whenever the rest of us want to find solutions and certainty, the British government are drawing new red lines and nearly like moving the goalposts, which is totally unacceptable given where we're at in this point in time. You know, as do, I'm assuming, the majority of members in this committee, that reflects the majority of MLAs in the Assembly, we all know what the protocol does, and that it prevents a hard border in this island, that it safeguards the Good Friday Agreement, and it protects the all-island economy. We also know that the backdrop to all of this is that Brexit is being foisted upon us, and the majority of people here didn't want it. So the protocol gives us that protection. But I think David Frost let the mask slip whenever he referred to the increase in North-South cooperation and in trade, that was a problem. I can't see how that's a problem. I've always wanted to find a reasonable way forward. I've always wanted to find solutions. I've always wanted to minimise any disruption to trade, north, south and east and west. But I think it's for those that negotiated and agreed to the withdrawal agreement and the protocol. It's for them to answer now why they're now saying that it's no longer fit for purpose, when clearly it is about protection. It is against the worst impacts. It does beg the question as to why the Tories and supported by the DUP, why they're trying to undermine what's been achieved in the protocol. We are where we are today, and I hope that the proposals that we see over the course of the next short while from the EU, which are practical proposals, which are how you can make the protocol work and make it easier for businesses to be able to correspond with what's required in terms of SBS checks, etc. I hope that there's solutions and stability found, and I hope that all sides actually put their best focus forward to try and find that way through, because I think quite often there are some that speak about bending the protocol. That's not what's going to happen here. It's an international treaty. It must be adhered to. But there are issues that needed to be resolved, and we've always been focused working with the stakeholders. And I very much welcome the work that's been done on the EU side to work and engage with local stakeholders, identifying the challenges and actually trying to find solutions. And I would suspect that's what we're going to receive from the EU side this afternoon.
But just to pick up on that, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Pat, for that question. Whenever it comes to the issue around the displacement of trade, and I can understand why some colleagues wanted to highlight that there has been increased north-south trade as a result of businesses having to identify alternatives to their supply chain. But in providing that evidence as being something which people wish to welcome, that is also the evidence that justifies the triggering of Article 16, because the protocol was never designed, at least in terms of those that advocate it, to displace trade from operating on an east-west and to a changed position of north-south. So I just make that point that those who advocate the protocol didn't advocate it as a way to thwart trade east-west to then generate enhanced trade on a north-south basis. In fact, that's the very evidence that justifies Article 16 in that particular circumstance. So rather than picking over the bones of the past and all of this, and I think we can all point to how we've got here and those who bear responsibility and so on. For my part and that of my party, we never supported the Conservative Party signing up to the Northern Ireland and Ireland Protocol. In fact, we voted against it when we had an opportunity to protect Northern Ireland in those circumstances at Westminster. I'm hopeful that we've now got recognition that there needs to be change. There needs to be a new arrangement found to provide us that free trade on an east-west and north-south dimension. I want us to very much have frictionless trade within the United Kingdom and with the Republic of Ireland, and I think that's something that we're all agreed upon. So let's encourage the UK government and the European Union to get us to that place, because I think if we can get to that place, that will be to the benefit of all of our people.
Just a final comment, Chair, if you don't mind. Well, I mean, I can't imagine why you would want to just be in exactly the same position as Britain, with empty supermarket shelves, petrol stations running out of fuel, and all the other shortages and problems that exist over there. And thank goodness we have the protocol here so that businesses can establish other supply lines. So thanks for that.
Okay.
I think on that point, Mr. Chairman, because I asked this question at one of our Four Nations calls that we would have most weeks. Great Britain has had a particular problem with HGV drivers. We don't have the same problem, and we have a much more resilient market when it came to fuel supply. So I'm not sure that we can pin the supply disruption on fuel, for example, on the issue of Brexit as to the reason in Great Britain. I think we actually had a more resilient local situation in respect of those issues.
Brexit has nothing to do with it.
Okay, thank you for those questions there and answers. I'm not sure with the North-South one, First Minister, whether we went from being philosophical to yes, Minister, to chicken and egg about when a meeting is a meeting, but I'm sure if we get the Hansard, we'll be able to pore over that and work out exactly what the right run of and which one of those three it was. I'm going to ask now if Diane Dodds is still on with us. I know that she did have to go at 3:15, but if she's still there, maybe wanted to ask a question. Are you still with us, Diane, there? Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Thank
okay.
you, Chair.
Go on ahead.
Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. A couple of questions that I want to ask, probably not with the same interrogation techniques, but with sincerity, really, I'd have to say. You started off, First Minister, talking about the recovery plan and the 4 target areas for that recovery plan. Sustainable economic development, green growth, tackling inequality and health. Yet one of the sections of our community who have most felt the impact of the pandemic are our young people and children. Where does education sit within the recovery plan? And will we see the same budgetary and finance commitment to education that the Finance Minister and I presume the rest of the executive have given to health? Because I do think that that is massively important. And if we are to recover properly, we cannot forget the impact of the pandemic on children and young people. And just to develop that theme a little bit further, the second element of that question really is about future-proofing economic recovery. And one of the ways that we can future-proof economic recovery is to build our capacity on skills. And we need to do that very, very rapidly because this economy is changing very rapidly. And we are now becoming high-tech manufacturing economy, an IT economy, and so on, and really competing with the best in these areas. We need to develop our skills. To do that, in my view, we will need a fully ring-fenced skills budget for Northern Ireland. And I noticed today that the Republic of Ireland had actually dedicated €42 million in their budget for skills. Now, Northern Ireland needs, if its economy is to be future-proofed for the future, then we need to develop the skills of our people. What do you think about a dedicated skills fund for Northern Ireland?
Well,
I don't mind. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, Diane, for the question. And you're absolutely right in terms of the impact on our young people. Whenever we look at the figures around those that were hardest hit financially, for example, it was young people and women were the two, because they were in the types of industries where whenever you close down around hospitality and different service areas, that's where people were hardest hit. And then when it comes to education, that did show where a lot of the inequalities do exist. There were some young people that did have appropriate iPads and IT and schools that were ready for all of that, but then there were others that were not in the same place. So, undoubtedly, the past 12 months has highlighted a lot of that inequality when it comes to education, and that is a key theme of the recovery plan, tackling that inequality. But as you rightly highlight, the skills aspect is a key one within the economic recovery. Trying to make sure that people have the right skills. And you will have heard it as Economy Minister, the number of businesses who want to offer people jobs, but they aren't able to get the skilled workforce. And that's a pressure, not just in Northern Ireland. It's something that I think right across the United Kingdom, there is a real pressure for businesses to have the appropriate skills for them to get into their workforce. So there does need to be a very focused effort whenever it comes to providing those skills with our further education colleges and universities, and that does require a dedicated financial resource to do that. And that's an area within the budget that I know that we did have a discussion as an executive recently around the kind of priorities that we want to see in that 3-year budget. And I think there's a real opportunity now with that 3-year budget cycle to look strategically at how we allocate funding and that economic recovery and a skills-based workforce is going to be vital in order to make further progress.
I don't think I need to add too much to that, Chair, just to say, I mean, it's, as been said, we have an opportunity with a 3-year budget cycle to be able to plan for the future and to make sure that we're properly investing in a sort of longer term thought out strategy, and particularly around the issue of skills and our children and young people. So that was very much to the fore of the conversations that we're having in terms of our plans for going forward. And I think under all of the recovery things, children and young people have a role to play in each and every one of them, and we need to support them in each and every one of those areas. So that's all I would add to that.
Thank you, Chair, and that's excellent. So I look forward to ring-fence budgets and perhaps looking at priority for the education budget. I noted yesterday in the debate that the education budget had suffered a cut of 5% in real terms, despite having 6% more children at school. So that leaves it in a very, very tough position going forward. And if we are to truly recover, then we will have to invest in education and children and young people. Just continuing the recovery theme, because I do think it is hugely important that people listening to this understand that this is a priority, both for the Assembly and the Executive. I noticed recently that the Dublin government had published their National Recovery Plan. Some of the actions also relate to Northern Ireland. What discussion have officials had around that plan? First Minister, Deputy First.
Well, thank you, Diane. And yes, I know the National Development Plan has been published, and you're right, it does make references to Northern Ireland in that. I'm not aware of engagement in respect of, certainly not at a ministerial level. I'm not aware if there haven't been engagement in the development of that National Development Plan. I suppose it is a matter ultimately for the Republic of Ireland government whenever it comes to what they're going to produce. But whenever you're going to talk about things in Northern Ireland, it would have been, I think, appropriate for information certainly to have been shared around that. But I'm not aware of any particular engagement around that, but I'm quite happy that we would seek to look into that to try and find out if there was that level of engagement taking place.
Just to say, we have an ongoing officials engagement. The National Development Plan was only published last week. One of the headlines in that programme is the Shared Island Unit. The funding for that would be doubled in the period up to 2030. Again, all of that much needed investment, the doubling of funding is in jeopardy because of the threat from DUP ministers not to attend North-South Ministerial Council meetings, where all these things get thrashed out and discussed at both ministerial level and official level. I hope that that comes to an end and that we are able to progress the much needed funding that has been earmarked for the Shared Island Fund, which takes in, I suppose, a whole range of really, really vital infrastructure projects that we've been working with the Irish Government on and will continue to do over the years ahead. So there is a lot at stake in terms of the North-South Ministerial Council meetings and what they actually can deliver. But I look forward to being able to delve in more detail into that additional funding over the course of the weeks and months ahead.
Sorry, I just want to come back on that just for a second. I've had my share of North-South Ministerial meetings, never really had anything much to do with the Shared Island Fund in any of them. And it is strange that another government is indicating what should or shouldn't be invested in another part of another jurisdiction. But moving on, also from that, there's a lot of misconceptions about the threat to peace funding money. So I'll just quickly maybe reiterate for information. The European Union and the Irish Government are contributing 258 million to the Peace Fund. The British Government are contributing €560 million to the Peace Fund, and the Northern Ireland Executive are contributing 150 million. So unless either of those four sets of sides to this are going to say the game's up and no, we're not doing it, then there never really was any threat to the money of the Peace Fund. And that I do note that the British government are actually inputting more into the Peace Fund than everybody else put together. Thank you, Chair. I do apologise to everyone that I have to go, but I have another meeting that has to happen. Thank you very much.
Okay, next question then is from Alex.
Yeah, thank you for your presentations so far. I have a few questions, just a few things I need to get my head around. On the flags and identity report, Paul, if I'm right in saying you've approved the report to be released, if I picked that up correctly.
Yes.
And if you've done that, who's holding it back? Is it has the Deputy First Minister approved it from her end, or what? Why?
Sorry, Alex, I don't mean to be rude by interrupting, and it's certainly up to the First Minister, but we've already done a full round of questioning on this with that very question. I don't know, maybe if you weren't listening, but it's up to the First Minister whether he wishes to answer, but we've already had those questions.
Just to confirm, Mr. Chairman, Alex has covered it there accurately. I have approved its publication for that to be released.
Can I just clarify, Chair, again, not to rehearse old ground, but let's be clear. All parties were represented in the FIC group. All parties have the report that is yet to be published. I absolutely support the publishing of the report, but I also equally support alongside not just the facts of the report itself, but actually how we're going to implement it and how we're going to improve things. So that is the blockage in terms of that is not with myself.
Chair, with all due respect to you, there hasn't been a clear answer to this, because I don't know why this report's not getting out there, because nobody's given us a clear answer. So anyway, the next question.
If there's clarity, Alex,
sorry?
The DUP would publish the report, but not with the annex, and Sinn Féin don't want to see it published unless it has the annex, and therefore it's not getting published. I think that's been fairly clear from them today.
I think, Chair, no, that's actually quite unfair and incorrect. It's an executive response that needs to be agreed, and that's yet to be agreed. That's the implementation piece that needs to come forward.
First Minister, it's the Department of Disagreement, so we know that no decisions come from it. But we'll go back to Alex, please.
Chair, with all due respect, just to be clear again, let's clarify that I want to see the report published, but equally I want to see the executive response as to how we're going to turn around and implement the recommendations from the report. So I think that's also important, and that will take everybody around the executive table working together.
But it's not going to happen because it doesn't get the joint approval.
The executive needs to agree collectively the response in terms of the implementation.
Okay, clear as mud, Chair. Maybe I should go on to the next question.
Well, I think no, let's move away from flags, because we're just not going to get clarity from the Executive Office on it. So, but I'm sure it will be continued to pursue it. But we'll go back to yourself, Alex.
Okay. In terms of, I'm not sure what it's going to be called or how it's been called, in terms of the Cultural Act or the Irish Language Act that is going to be pushed through Westminster, which, well, I would say it's very much against what I would want to be seen the way it's been done. But how are they planning to do that in their bill? Are they picking this up directly from what's been agreed under a New Decade, New Approach, or from documentations coming from the First and Deputy First Minister's office? How are Westminster proposing to go ahead with that in their actual bill that they're foisting on us through Westminster? Do we know, Aidan?
I think, Mr. Chairman, that's a question that Alex and the committee may want to be asking of the Secretary of State. My view is, as is all issues that are devolved, these matters should be dealt with through the Northern Ireland Assembly. I think there are multiple examples now where Westminster has overreached, and I am someone who is committed to devolution. But we have seen now a series of examples where that principle has been breached by Westminster. They did it at a period when these institutions weren't operating properly on a number of issues, and this would be another example. where they would be breaching the devolved settlement in doing that. I think the Assembly is best placed to manage these issues. But in terms of what the Secretary of State plans to do, when he's going to do it, and the content that is going to be contained within that, should he do it, that's a matter for the Secretary of State. I am not in a position to answer for him.
The political commitment that has been made is that the three pieces of legislation will be moved together this month, before the end of this month, and it is a direct lift of what was agreed politically here. This was a political agreement that was made many, many years ago. This was a political commitment that was reneged on by parties to agreements over many, many years on many occasions. I'm glad that there's now a way forward. I'm glad that on the issue of rights for those with an Irish national identity, that will now be delivered upon. I look forward to the detail. I look forward to the legislation being tabled. I look forward to the committee having a chance to work your way through the detail of all of that. And I find it disappointing, Alex, that you don't support an inclusive society. I would have thought that as we move into the year 2021 and we move forward, I think all of us benefit from the richness of our diversity, and all of us benefit from bringing who we are to the table and actually sharing and encouraging each other. So I think it's unfortunate that you don't share that view, but of course you're entitled to hold your view.
Chair, never once did I mention what I supported, so I don't know whether Deputy First Minister's put words into my mouth, but anyway, we'll not go there. My next question is about the Northern Ireland Protocol, and I see the EU are saying that they're willing to offer fewer Northern Ireland border checks as the way forward. Now, having and reducing border checks really doesn't resolve the situation of having the Northern Ireland Protocol, which places a border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. Could either the First or Deputy First Minister confirm to me that business has been affected considerably more between us and the rest of the United Kingdom than it has been as a gain for trade between us and the Republic of Ireland?
Well, thank you, Alex. In respect of that issue, we know that businesses have been impacted, because businesses tell us they have been, in terms of their ability to source their goods from Great Britain, and that movement coming from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Indeed, that is why some of the supply chain has recalibrated in terms of sourcing it from the south, or indeed from other parts of Europe. That's why the protocol has actually been harmful, because it was, by those who advocate it, it was not meant to displace the movement of goods and people's supply chain. But it isn't just businesses. We know that it is impacted on citizens, because whenever they go to get different goods, Northern Ireland, we are unable to provide your goods. So businesses have been impacted, and our citizens have been impacted in their ability to source goods from Great Britain. So undoubtedly, the friction does not exist on a north-south basis, and therefore there has been no friction on a north-south basis, but there has been that friction created on an east-west basis.
Can I say, Chair, just the majority of people here obviously rejected Brexit, and the protocol gives us protection and some shelter from the worst impact of it. I have never wanted to see friction north-south or east-west. I've always wanted that to be minimised. I hope that the proposals that we have today allow us to move forward to provide the certainty and the stability that certainly that so many people crave. But I think some of the rhetoric of this week of the British government, particularly in relation to the European Court of Justice being a new red line, or moving the goalposts, isn't helpful. It's certainly not what our society at large want to see. So I hope that there will be progress this week. I think we all have to work on that basis. However, it's going to take there needs to be a very real conversation just in terms of the fact that there are new trading realities in a post-Brexit world, and we always knew that Brexit wasn't good for us. We always knew that it was going to cause damage. What we have is mitigation against the worst excesses that comes in the form of the protocol, and that will remain. But I do hope that the solutions that have been proposed today or will be proposed by the EU will give us some way in which to move forward.
It's just my opinion that the Northern Protocol has actually made lives much poorer in Northern Ireland for everybody, and it doesn't matter what side of the divide you come from. It's affected businesses. I mean, you can't even get cat food at times in Tesco's. That's just how ridiculous the whole thing is. So I think everybody's poorer for the Northern Ireland Protocol, in my opinion.
Okay, Alex, we've had 3 questions and we're nearly 2 hours into this presentation. Can we pop on to the other speakers now? Maybe if we could move to yourself, Emma.
Thanks, Chair. And as you've referenced there, we've had a mammoth session, so I want to thank both the ministers for their contributions thus far. I've just got a couple of remarks and questions, so I'll group all together for today and say if that's all right. So the first thing I want to touch on, you made reference at the start of your remarks about the independent investigation into the mother and baby institutions in the north and the recommendations that we had released last week emanating from that report. And obviously you have spoken about the incomprehensible pain and trauma that was inflicted on women and girls and children from across the north as a result of those institutions. Do you agree that the only way that we're going to deal with the fallout from these institutions is through a joined up and comprehensive approach, and that we now need to see the implementation of these recommendations as a priority? And following on from that, Michelle, I know myself and yourself have both sent condolences today to the family of the woman that was sadly murdered in tragic circumstances between Niclochram and Gulleduff in her own constituency in Mid-Ulster. And obviously there's a live investigation ongoing there, and I want to reiterate my sympathies are with her family and all of those impacted by that, and I know that the local community are in complete shock and sadness at what has happened. She is the 11th woman to have been killed since the beginning of lockdown, and I know again you've made reference to the women and girls, or the violence against women and girls strategy. So obviously both of these things are a result of misogyny, and that's the root cause of domestic violence and violence against women and girls. So would you agree that a joined up approach then, and the implementation of that strategy as a priority, is the only way that we're going to tackle that issue? And then on a completely unrelated note, I just want to note my frustration with the failure to appoint the panel of experts for the ad hoc committee on the Bill of Rights, which I'm obviously involved with, and I know that the blockage for the panel of experts isn't coming from the Sinn Féin side of the Executive Office, but this delay is unacceptable, and I would appreciate your comments on that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. I mean, just firstly to absolutely concur with you around the need for us to maintain the momentum that was achieved with the publication of the report last week on mother and baby homes and Magdalen laundries and workhouses. And the only way we're going to be successful in actually turning that around and actually responding in the way in which we should is if we're very connected and we're very joined up, and that we're very compassionate, because at the core of this are women who have been traumatised, who've been brutalised, who've had their babies stolen from them, who've been denied information at every turn. So I think that we have an opportunity here to build the momentum that was achieved via the report and actually respond. So I'm glad to say that we have officials off looking at that at this moment in time, and we expect that we will have recommendations being brought back for discussion in the executive at the end of the month, but certainly into maybe the first week of November. So we're very conscious that is a significant piece of work that we want to respond to very quickly. So we'll keep the committee just appraised of the developments in relation to that. Secondly, your point around the lady that has tragically lost her life in our constituency in Mid-Ulster, and it's so distressing. It's a horrible incident, and what's happened to this woman is cruel. And she is the 11th woman to lose her life from I believe from the start of the pandemic. So that's something that society as a whole needs to sit up and listen to, and realise that we need action, because these aren't isolated incidents. It's not just something that's happening now and then. This is something that is a real threat to women's lives every day. So I think that as has been recognised previously, we don't have a strategy at this point in time around tackling violence against women and girls. And we have collectively decided, I'm glad to say, as an executive, that we need to address that. And as part of the executive's response to the escalating problem, there will be an executive office-led strategy. And I'm really glad to say that we have made progress, and we've actually brought someone in to lead on this work, and Claire Archibald, who probably will have a chance to present to the committee over the course of the period ahead. But she's been brought in to actually lead on this strategy, to work with sectors, and I know she's already off and she's hit the ground running in terms of engagement, because we want this to be very much about co-design, so working with the women's sector and bringing forward ambitious solutions and making sure that we get a first-class strategy in place as quickly as possible. So just to give you an assurance that that is actually what we are actively engaged in. And then finally, you raised the point of, what was the third one? Oh, the Bill of Rights. And the panel of experts, and the member, of course, is right that progressing the blockage and in terms of the appointments doesn't sit with me. I'd be very keen that we could get this new decade, new approach commitment delivered. And it's something that will benefit everybody. It's not, something that benefits just a few. This is actually a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It's rights for everybody in society. Community rights, social rights, economic rights. It's rights across the board, and it's something that we all would benefit from. So I hope that we can get progress on that.
Thank you, Emma, for the questions. And I'll not, I suppose, for sake of time, pick up on those two first issues. I agree in terms of trying to get progress around that and how best we can do it. And certainly on the violence against women and girls, I know that Claire Archibald is currently Deputy Head of Legal Services in DSO, and she's joining the TEO team to lead this because we really want to have this brought forward and pushed. So Claire's a highly competent individual, and she's going to be putting the momentum behind this to try and take it forward. So let us make progress on that. And in terms of those recommendations from the Truth Recovery Design Panel, that's something that we're agreed on. We want to see the executive in a position to take the next steps forwards on that issue. And I know we haven't had a chance just to touch on it in today's session, but the Deputy First Minister and I will be meeting with the 6 different institutions tomorrow in respect of the historical institutional abuse issue, particularly around the kind of redress issue. So that meeting is going to take place tomorrow, and we want to see more progress in terms of that issue, getting a step forward. And on the matter of the panel of experts, and I've noted this now on a number of issues, we do work really hard in the Executive Office to get consensus and agreement and try and find a way forward. And it seems to be whenever consensus isn't found, the kind of stop line is now the blockage isn't on my side of the department. On my side, we've identified 3 expert panels. DFM wants to sign off on them, we can do that. So I don't think it's really the way to go about saying that if you don't agree with what we say, therefore the blockage isn't on my side. The nature of this department requires that consensus to be achieved, a collective approach to be taken. And whenever you don't get your way, I don't think really it is good enough just to say the blockage isn't with me. If we want to unblock that issue, there's 3 experts there, I think, that we can make progress on. I would just add, Mr. Chairman, on that, my understanding is the committee has taken expert advice from a range of individuals in order to have their consideration, of the issue that they're dealing with around the Bill of Rights. And I suppose at this stage of the mandate, and where the committee is currently at, that is something that would just need to be held into consideration. But the way to get progress, not just on this issue, but on other issues that require consensus, is to get to that middle ground as opposed to holding out to an absolute position. I don't think that is the way for us to get progress, and then to present that somehow the DUP is the blockage. Where we have made progress within the Executive Office and in the wider executive is where we found common ground, rather than holding out until a particular position is achieved by the various different parts of the executive.
as best exercised by your position, re the protocol and staying in the institutions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Emma, you've got a long answer there on the fact that there is, it's very difficult to get answers from the Executive Office, but I think we're well versed on that in this committee. The final question, you'll be pleased to hear, First Ministers, is from Christopher Stalford.
Thank you very much. Paul, could you tell me how many North-South Ministerial Council meetings there were between 2017 and the restoration of devolution?
I think that would be none.
0, yes, and that was because these institutions were collapsed because certain people had issues that they wanted addressed. So when we're getting high-blown lectures about our responsibilities and preserving the institutions, I think it's very, very important that people reflect on their previous actions. Have we had any indication what sort of concessions the EU plans to propose today in relation to the protocol?
I'm not aware that our officials that deal with the EU exit issue have been given sight yet of those proposals. There may well be political channels that has received some information in that. I haven't had that information at either official or through political channels, although it has been well trailed, I think, now at this stage on social media accounts in terms of the general thrust of what the European Union are intending to propose.
It kind of makes those, given the concessions are on the way, it kind of makes those who call for rigorous implementation look a bit foolish now. But anyway, I want to raise an issue that Diane sort of touched upon in terms of the impact of school closures and what that has had, that impact has had upon children. And obviously, I should declare an interest. I have 4 children all going through primary school. Can you assure me that in the event of further lockdowns being announced in the winter, and obviously we all hope that we don't get to that point, but in the event of that coming along, that the very last thing that will be locked down will be our schools?
Sure, I'm happy to come in on that. I mean, just to, as Mr. would expect me to, let me pick up on some of his earlier points, and then I'm happy to take up the point around the lockdown. People will not be fooled by DUP revisionism. So here we are at this point in time wherein the public want us to be dealing with the issues that are weighing heavy on their minds today, the issues of COVID recovery, the issue of building our society after the pandemic and everything that is meant for our people's mental health, everything else that they want us to be working on. The fact that our waiting lists are really, at a ridiculous point. That's where they want us to be very much focused on. And that's what I am here to do. I hope that there are positive developments out of what's being proposed by the EU side today. But let's also be extremely honest to the point around the fact that the protocol is in place to mitigate the worst excesses of the Brexit, the hardest possible Brexit that your party helped to deliver. But secondly, the protocol remains in place. We've obviously always been trying solutions and ways to, I suppose, to make things easier for people to be able to operate on a day-to-day basis. We've always been up for that. So I think the protections that were afforded to us from the protocol, whether that be the all-island economy in terms of no hard border on this island and protection of the Good Friday Agreement, those 3 things remain today as they did whenever the British government signed up to the protocol. But I hope, as I said, that we find some way today to be able to find sensible solutions, some simplification where we can, a bespoke arrangement in terms of the SBS checks, the customs arrangements, everything else that we've always been trying to find a way forward on. So I will, hopefully this might be my last contribution to the committee today, I don't know, but just to say, I mean, I hope that there is a positive outcome after what's being delivered today. And I encourage all sides to actively work together to try and find the solutions.
That's some distance from rigorous implementation, but I suppose earlier or later today we'll find out just how much of the protocol they're prepared to demolish, and hopefully we'll get to the final point of full demolition and removal.
Well, perhaps, Christopher, if it helps, I still insist on rigorous implementation of the protections of the Good Friday Agreement, the all-island economy, and no hard border on this island. What's being proposed today doesn't take away from that, but thank you.
Still insist on making it more difficult to operate a business in Northern Ireland. That's some stance. I asked a question to the First Minister in relation to schools. I wonder, sir, if you could come in on that.
Yes, thank you, Christopher. And in terms of the autumn-winter contingency plan that will be published next week, you're absolutely right. It would be the absolute last resort whenever it would come to wanting to reimpose measures that would close down schools, businesses. That would be something that you would need to be in a very, very bad place to do that. And I recognise, as you do, I know you serve on school boards of governors. I serve on 3 of them with over 2,000 children in those particular schools. And I recognise the incredible work that our teaching profession put in at a time whenever schools weren't able to meet. But speaking to that teaching profession and to parents, it is no substitute for being in a classroom and to be able to physically meet with children. And that is not something that any of us want to get to. And of course, with the rollout of the vaccination programme, with now 89% of our adult population being vaccinated, we're into the high 80% fully vaccinated. That has always been the best tool to avoid the measures that had happened previously. So I very much hope that we're not in that position. We shouldn't be in that position because of the successful rollout of the vaccination programme, and we all continue to play our part in respect of that. But I agree wholeheartedly with you. Schools absolutely have to be protected. We need to deliver that education system and a world-class one that we do have in our school environment.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Apologies for building your hopes up there, Ministers, that it was the last question. I believe maybe Porrig is looking to come on for a question or two, so we'll pass over to himself.
Can't get rid of me that easily, Colin. I just wanted to comment on a different point. Just wanted to say it was great to see Joint First Minister Michelle O'Neill in Derry at the Magee campus last Friday, and that was to launch the first degree-level apprenticeship in manufacturing and engineering, and it's done in cooperation between Ulster University and the Mid-Ulster Manufacturing and Growth Advancement. So I wanted on that point to ask Joint First Minister O'Neill if she could explain the executive, the commitment made in NDNA to bring 10,000 students to Magee.
Thank you for that. And I suppose just to say, firstly, it was great to be in Derry again on Friday and to be at the Magee campus, because I was very passionate about the project that we were launching. This is the first ever, I think, on this island of a degree programme of this nature, an apprenticeship programme that helps a young person get a degree, come out of university with no debt, helps them have on-the-job experience. And that's so beneficial for the whole manufacturing engineering sector, who are desperate to get people to come in and work in that sector. So it's a win-win, in my opinion, for both the individual student, but also for the engineering and manufacturing sector, but also for Magee, who are first in the field on this. So there's certainly, and I detected from all my conversations on Friday, there's a real vibrancy in the city, and people are enthused about a whole lot of things that are coming down the tracks. So whether it's the investment in Magee in terms of the graduate entry medical school, or the 10,000 additional places, which I am fully committed to working with all stakeholders in delivering. And I think that's going to be a real boost that's much needed for what can be a city that's got such a great university offering, the tourism potential of Derry, all the projects that we're involved with in TEO, I'm certainly very passionate about. So when you combine the advancements in Magee, when you combine the City Deals project funding, when you combine the North West Development Fund, the North South Ministerial Council meeting has also just discussed developing more research projects with our universities across the North West area. All those things come together, makes a very, very exciting potential for the future. And I'm certainly committed to working with yourself and other representatives in the area and stakeholders in bringing forward all these plans.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that.
can I just pick up on that too, Chairman, and one welcome, Padraig, to your new role in the Assembly and to this committee. I can remember a time whenever I looked young as well, so resist ministerial office. It'll age you if you take it. But you're very welcome to this committee, and I wish you well in your role in Foyle as an Assembly member. And I've been to McGee University. I was there for the launch of the Graduate School of Medicine, and there's absolutely fantastic potential for the development of the Northwest. And I'm excited about its prospects as well. And I know my colleague Gordon Lyons was talking about the investment that the Department for the Economy has also been putting into the Northwest. Indeed, there'll be other parts of Northern Ireland will start be saying, what about us as well? But the Northwest has huge potential. It's got a great population there, and in terms of the university, with that comes business investment, because you've got a skilled workforce, and that is all going to help to provide great opportunities for the Northwest. And I know my colleague Gary Middleton, who's the junior minister, has a particular interest as well in that constituency to see it being successful, as I do.
Okay, thank you for that. I was going to quit, maybe, Paul, that did you ever look young? I think I've always known you looking like this, but then of course you, just to remind you again of that threshold that you crossed yesterday whenever you became 40, that it just very quickly goes downhill. But
I thought life began
and once again,
to
offer you a happy birthday for being 40 yesterday. Life only begins, apparently.
Well, thanks for being easy on me, Colin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I had an easy paper round, so I did. But look, thank you very much indeed to both of you. It was a mammoth session, slight dig, because it was 6 months from we last saw First Deputy First Minister. There was a lot for us to cover, so hopefully we can get you back up again sometime soon. But thank you for sitting through nearly 2 hours of questioning. That is very much appreciated. But thank you.
I'm more than happy, Chair, to come in every time we're invited. I don't believe we'll refuse an invite yet, so we'll continue to take it up. Thank you.
Well, we've been inviting you from May to come along, and it's taken you till October. So we'll put the invite in now, and maybe we'll get you before the next election. But thank you very much indeed. So we can leave you there. Thank you now. Goodbye. Folks, what we'll do, we'll take 2 minutes while we swap the people around on the screen there, and maybe just let ourselves grab a coffee and back to our seats, and then we can...
What way are we for quorum?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Need 5. It's only...
Was Christopher gone now?
It's only... Do you need to go?
I was supposed to be in a meeting at 4 o'clock, but it's not... I can...
The presentation on the finance October monitoring round isn't... There's no decisions. It's only...
Not necessarily, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How much?
I'm just seeing if there's anything we different. Well, we're okay at the minute. We would have a quorum if you left, but... From item 5 to item 6, which is the departmental spending plans for the October monitoring round, the oral briefing. I refer members to page 20 of the meeting pack and the tabled pack. I think the information that we've received from the department is in the tabled pack because it wasn't received in time for the meeting pack. Once again, that's a regular occurrence, but members got it, I think, on Monday evening, so there's an opportunity for them to have been able to look at that. If we could invite up into the spotlight then Dennis McMahon, the new Permanent Secretary, Gareth Johnson, the Director of Strategic Policy, Equality and Good Relations. We also have Nelia Lloyd, the Director of Finance and Corporate Services, and Tara Kennedy, the Head of the Finance Branch. So if we could invite all of yourselves. Yep, we've got you there. And if I could begin by welcoming Dennis to his first time to the committee here under this guise as Permanent Secretary in the Executive Office. You're very welcome, as are all of your colleagues. And maybe what we can do is pass over to yourselves to give us maybe a quick run through the October monitoring round document, and then we can go to questions and comments after that. And apologies for the delay. I know we're after 4 o'clock and this will probably take us beyond 5, but we'll pass over to yourselves anyway.
Well, first of all, Chair, can I just check that you can hear me okay?
Yes, yeah, we can indeed, yes.
Okay, well, look, thank you very much for the invite. And I suppose I wanted to start off by, and I'm sorry to have to start off this way, but just by apologising that the paper was late. Now, we were glad to get it to you yesterday, but I'm really sorry that has to be the first thing I say. Having said that, I just want to pay tribute to my colleagues. I know you get to see the end of this process, but my colleagues have done a huge amount of work here, and certainly any delay has not been due to the efforts on their part. I would like to thank the committee for the invite, and I'm looking forward to working with the committee. I found from previous roles that the challenge and the input that we get from committees has been absolutely crucial, and actually the harder the issue and the more challenging the scrutiny, sometimes the more helpful it is to keep us out of trouble in the longer term. So very much welcome working with the committee on that basis. Just to say that we're talking about the October monitoring round. You have obviously received the paper, and I just want to draw your attention to some of the detail on that. But I suppose before I say that, the opening position for our budget was £120 million in this year, and over half of that was ring-fenced. And I just want to say that that's an important point, because TEO is a department that delivers a lot, and it delivers a lot very quickly. And it maybe helps to set in context some of the things that are going on and some of the learning that we're going through as we develop through the year. And that maybe put that in context of what I'm going to talk about. And I suppose really where we want to be as a department, we'll be coming back. I'll be coming back to speak to the committee and looking forward to doing that. But where we're going as a department is we want to be really the centre of partnership working, of innovative working and agile delivery. And, that's always going to be a challenge, but that's where we want to get to as a department. And I think that was the idea behind creating this post that I'm in. So anyway, I suppose the October monitoring rounds provide a further opportunity to review our spending plans and our budgetary requirements. And in terms of the ring-fence budgets that I talked about earlier, you'll be aware that TEO has an opening budget of 46.2 million for historical institutional abuse. So that's a big part of the budget. Revised estimates at the time of October monitoring indicate a further reduced requirement of some £3.2 million. And this has been declared as a ring-fenced easement to the Department of Finance as required by the guidance. And as officials have said before, it's important to re-emphasise that this change in the anticipated budgetary requirements will not impact on payments to victims and survivors. I just want to make that very, very clear. It will not impact on payments, nor on the budgets for the Commission, for COSIGA or for survivor services. But it does reflect more refined assumptions that are now available. And again, part of that's about learning, because we're actually doing things quite differently. Continue to recognise that given a number of uncertainties, cost estimates for the Victims Payment Scheme for permanent disablement are extremely difficult to predict. At this stage, we're forecasting pressure of some 4.8 million in relation to the projected implementation costs, which comprises an increase in medical assessment costs of 3.8 million, Department of Justice staff costs of 0.5 million, and extra resources required in diagnosis costs, also projected to increase by 0.5 million. So these costs are dependent on the number of applications, and therefore may change when the number of applications become clear. And again, we're very aware this is a demand-led scheme, but we're using the best information that we can use around from the Government Actuary Department. We'll talk about that, no doubt, during the questioning. Some cost elements are still unknown, and forecast spend will continue to be monitored as the scheme progresses. There remains huge uncertainty around all of the estimates that we talked about, not unlike the historical institution abuse and the various assumptions that have been built on. The budget for payments will be kept under close review, and a further assessment will be made as part of the final monitoring round of the year. So we placed a resource bid for 3.2 million as well to address technical issues that has arisen in relation to financial transactions, capital interest receivable. And this is money that we have built into our budget during the course of the year, and it helps us to actually cope with the demands that are being placed on us. So we're hopeful that we'll have that budget, that demand met, or that request met. We've also taken the opportunity to bid to DOF for 0.5 million of funding to support good relations from the centrally held DSC funding programme. It's no longer feasible for TEO to take forward a further tranche of DSC in the current year. And I have to say I'm delighted coming back into this area of work, because delivering social change was something I was involved in starting up, and it's great to see the work that colleagues have done in the time intervening. So in terms of our capital budget, we have made a capital bid of £1 million to DOF in this monitoring round to address the pressure due to the rephasing of social investment fund projects into 2021-22. So look, I just didn't want to say much more than that. Just wanted to give you a few pointers to some of the key questions that you want to ask, and happy to cover any issues that will be of help to the committee at this stage. Thank you very much, Chair.
All right, Dennis, thank you very much, and I appreciate that there, and also it was a very quick run through what can be a complex issue, so I hope that some of the questions aren't maybe repetitive of what you've said there, but and maybe if I could begin by asking just, I suppose it's the easement of 8.7 million for the HIA, and I know that there seems to be that that's quite far off the mark from what was thought. So it's just about how good we are at hitting the target of what we need, so that there aren't large easements. But one issue that we've been fed here as a committee is concern that the awards are not as high as the people that the victims that are going through the process would have expected. And I'm wondering, is that one of the reasons it's hitting the budget? And if so, is there a breakdown from what maybe the department thought the budget would be, because it expected people to be getting certain awards, but now that it's been farmed out to another group, a redress board, to make those awards that they're not as high? Is there something in that we maybe need to redress the redress board, and could that feature as part of that review?
Well, we'll talk, and I'll bring Gareth in maybe to talk in a bit more detail about the detail on the amounts of the average amounts that people are getting. But I suppose in general terms, it's worth saying a little bit about the background to this. So the Hart Review had identified 22 homes which were investigated during the Hart Review, and with 6 targeted investigations and a further 76 organisations that are of interest to this. And we've had 2,006 applications. We've had a huge amount of work done by the board. So I think that is probably that's certainly explains why we've got a demand-led scheme. There's a lot of uncertainty built into that. There's uncertainty about who's going to come forward, and that is having an impact on how we then assess the numbers, and we have to change them, and we'll continue having to change them. And it's similar, it actually applies both to the historical institutional abuse issue and also in terms of the permanent disablement scheme around victims, because again, these are demand-led schemes. We want to make them as person-centred as possible, and certainly one of the lessons learned from our earlier experiences setting up the victims and survivors project was that it wasn't just about getting money out of the door, it was about making sure that people were heard and that we were taking on board their concerns. So Gareth might maybe talk a bit more detail about just the amounts of money and how that's calculated. Gareth?
We've been experiencing, Chair, what I've described on a previous occasion, I think, as the triple whammy in terms of trying to estimate the requirements that there'll be for historical institutional abuse. We don't know exactly how many people went through institutions. We don't know how many of those, alas, experienced abuse, and we don't know how serious the abuse was in those cases. The redress board is there to make an independent assessment of the severity, the duration, and the impact of the abuse. So we have faced real difficulties in making estimates, and the adjustments that you're seeing are very much part of those difficulties in estimating, rather than anything to do with downward pressure on the board and its awards. Mark Brown in front of this committee even a couple of years ago would have made clear to the committee that whatever awards were put forward by the board, those would be paid, and that has been the case. So the kind of adjustments that you're seeing just reflect the difficulties that we have had in estimating. That said, I think it's important to bear in mind, as Dennis has said, 2006 applications before they have come to the board. 1,548 of those have been before a panel. The panel has made awards totaling £28 million as of the end of September. So there has been much needed money that has been getting out to victims and survivors. That said, we have recognised, and ministers recognised, First Minister in the Assembly on the 5th of July, that there remain concerns for victims and survivors about the operation of the redress scheme. We're committed to addressing those. I've been having meetings with colleagues and with the victims groups over the last month. I'm up in Derry on Friday meeting another of the groups. We're pulling all that input together into a draft terms of reference, which we'll share with the groups next week, with the aim to bringing terms of reference for a very short, sharp review to ministers by the end of the month. Recognise the points that are being made by victims and survivors, recognise also the progress that the board has made. I think there's a need to bring all of this together into a way of working for the future that meets the needs of victims and survivors.
Okay, thanks for that, Gareth and Dennis. But maybe if I could just leave this point with just a comment, that being that if the department felt that more money was required because there may have been higher awards, that this committee feels that there may have been a need for higher awards, and that the victims themselves that are going through the process feel that they should have got higher awards, and it's simply the redress board. I just leave it at that stated doubt that maybe the redress board is wrong, and that maybe in that review that could be something that is considered, because it seems to be that the majority of people are feeling that the award should be higher, and that the only one that isn't thinking that it should be higher is the redress board, and that may lie in, there may be a theme that could be developed there which may help everybody to get the outcome maybe that we're all looking for, with the exception of the redress board. If I could move to the victims payment scheme, a pressure has been driven by an increase in Capita's medical assessment costs of £3.8 million. Capita getting things wrong, having to reassess, not getting the right amount of money, having to ask for more. You know, a lot of us had problems at the start whenever Capita were being awarded this contract, but are we now just several months in and they've missed the target by 3.8 million in their figures? Help me to have some confidence here.
So, sorry, Dennis.
Go ahead. That's okay, Gareth.
It wasn't Capita that missed the target in this case. It was me, or at least it was again trying to come up with some figures at an early stage when we were looking at budgets for this year, when we really didn't have a handle on what the medical assessment system would involve, or on what the costs might be, and we had put a nominal amount into the administration budget. What we're doing now is bringing that up to a more realistic amount that reflects the costs of developing the service and then running it through, well, the first cases, I'm glad to say, and the Deputy First Minister noted earlier, the first cases have already gone through from the board for medical assessment. So again, just reflecting the difficulties in projections, and that at the time that we were putting in bids for this year, we hadn't had the engagement with the President of the board about what the board's requirements were for a robust medical assessment process, and that process hadn't been designed. Capita has been engaging very closely with the victims and survivors groups and with the president of the board. And I know that the president met the Justice Committee informally in the last couple of weeks and was able to give his readout of the efforts that Capita had made. For example, to have a specialist team that is working on victims' payments in particular. To have flexibility built in about where assessments are happening and the ways in which they are happening to try to fit in with the needs of victims and survivors. And also just recognising that PIP was one scheme. This is an entirely different scheme. This is a scheme that is governed by the principles that are laid down in the victims' payments regulations. And the President acknowledging that all of these issues have been taken on board.
Well, Gareth, thank you. Confidence restored in Capita in this case, and hat tip to you for an honest answer. That's appreciated. Thank you. What I will do is my third point, just very quickly. Dennis, you had mentioned the issue of the FTC and just that an issue has emerged in relation to that, and that an additional bid of 3.2 million is required. Could you just talk me through again what the issue was?
Yeah, so this is there's been a long-standing arrangement that we actually channel financial transactions capital through to major projects and through to various different work on the ground, investment on the ground through the Strategic Investment Board. This is something that the department has done for a number of years now. And as a result of that, there are interest payments made on that capital. And using the guidance that was available to us over the years, we had we had kept that as part of our budget and used it obviously for the public work that we're doing. And more recently, this has been looked at again with our colleagues in Department of Finance. And as a result of that, it seems that the approach we've taken does not work, certainly doesn't work now, and we're not going to be able to do that from here on in. That's the view that's been taken. Now we're still in discussions about this with our colleagues. But in the meantime, as a prudent measure, we wanted to make sure we got a bid into the system. And as I said, obviously we need to wait till that process goes through. But I have to say, colleagues have been helpful to us in the Department of Finance in resolving this, and we would be hopeful that this resource will be in our budget going forward. So I don't know if Neela wants to add any more technical detail to that, but that's the general picture.
Thanks, Dennis. Just very quickly to say, I mean, that is exactly the issue. The issue has arisen fairly recently as well. And as Dennis, you said, we were working through the details with officials and continue to do that with our officials in DOF. But as a prudent measure, it was felt necessary to bid at this stage into the October monitoring round. As you said in your opening comments, we have built that budget cover into our 21-22 financial plan to cope with the budgetary demands placed on us. So as you say, we're hopeful that that will be met in a favourable way. And it does relate to the budgeting treatment of the recording of interest receivable on those loans that have an interest bearing element to them. Not all the loans do, but on those that do, this is what it specifically relates through to.
Okay, thank you very much. That gives an explanation for that. I'm potentially going to recommend that you make your financial presentations to the committee, if you always do it after First and Deputy First Minister, because everybody's exhausted. At this stage, I don't actually have anybody indicating that they want to ask any questions. The only one that I'll check with is, I'm not sure if Porrig's raised hand function is working. It wasn't working earlier, so I'll just double check with Porrig to see if he...
No, that's perfect. You're
happy enough? Okay. Well, look, guys, on Dennis, on that basis, thank you very much for the presentation on the monitoring round. I fear you got off quite well with that, quite easily with that. We'll get it hopefully scheduled for you next time at the top of a meeting, and that might get some more probing there. But look, we'll put it down to the fact that the report presented is so straightforward. It answers all the questions that we might have had. So thank you very much to all of you for your attendance today.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's appreciated. Okay, members, we'll move on if we can. That was item 6, so that will bring us then next to item 7, which is the scrutiny of arm's length body, the Mays Long Cash Development Corporation. There's a written briefing on pages 23 to 42 of the meeting pack. We had agreed at the planning day to invite written briefings from arm's length bodies in lieu of oral briefings. Is there any aspects of the report that's presented today that anybody would like to raise? Trevor?
Yeah, Chair, sorry, my technology has gone haywire today completely, but in the budget, Mays Long Cash there's, I think, £280,000 for necessary health and safety work on the hangar doors at the Mays, and for anybody that hasn't been there, the hangar doors won't open. When they get an aircraft in, they have to take it apart, as far as I know. So, and I noticed in the monitoring round there, but I couldn't just access it, didn't ask the question, that there was reference to suspension of the hangar door project. So, which is it? I think has it been suspended, I wonder, because there's a possibility of alternative funding streams, Heritage Lottery Fund, things like that? Or is it suspended through lack of money? I'm sorry, I can't access it here on the screen to put the question properly.
Okay, well, look, maybe should we write and get the clarification on that, and then that, because otherwise we'll be guessing, I suppose, ultimately. So if we get the answer,
Well,
then
if we could just write and ask clarification, you know.
Okay, no problem. Any other points on the on that item? Okay, members, just to note that the committee has also been invited to visit the site. Is that something that members would wish to participate in?
Oh yeah.
Right. You are unanimous in that projection there, I see. So
Been there several times.
we'll take that as a given. Okay, item 8 is the forward work programme, which is on pages 44 of the meeting pack. Are members content to note the forward work programme?
Yep.
Okay, correspondence then. There are 4 items of correspondence, pages 51 to 83, and there are also some in the table pack. Just to mention, in the table pack, I think it is, there's correspondence from the Community Foundation in relation to a request to share replies to committee correspondence sent as a consequence of the oral briefing from the Community Foundation on the 9th of June. Are we happy to share this correspondence with the Community Foundation?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Are members happy enough to note the rest of the correspondence then?
Yep.
Okay. Any other business then? Item 10?
Please.
Yes?
Chair, I'm sure I wasn't the only one a bit confused by the First Minister's explanation about the process of North-South Ministerial Council meetings. And if I got it right, what he's saying is that Minister Mallon and Minister Kearney have confirmed their attendance at a meeting which hasn't been called, which sounds ridiculous. Now, I would have thought these meetings were organised well in advance, and they involve Southern ministers as well. So really, are we really expected to believe that this meeting hasn't been agreed, called, organised for 2 days from now? It just sounds ridiculous. And what I would like is perhaps we could ask for an explanation of the process of how these meetings are called, organised, at what period in advance. Let's just get all the details, because it is unsatisfactory.
Certainly.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, go on ahead. Is that Parag? Go on ahead.
Yeah, just second that as well.
Okay, thank you. I mean, certainly what I heard was that a minister didn't write to ask for the meeting to be called, and therefore, because he didn't write for the meeting to be called, the First Minister couldn't call the meeting, even though other ministers were looking to attend the meeting. So I don't know why they couldn't have written to ask for the meeting, but I think the process seems quite ridiculous, and I think we all noted that the response was farcical from the First Minister. So maybe if we actually get him to commit what he was saying in the meeting today in writing, then maybe...
I'm sure I could probably look it up. There must be a written down process somewhere for how these meetings are constituted. So a bit of explanation would be useful.
Certainly the clarity
By
would
the
be
sound of
helpful.
it, you're just as confused as I was. So.
Yeah. Maybe we could ask them about the FICT report, but they might take a lot of paper to write down the answer to that one, and I don't know if we would be any clearer at the end of it. So
I was going to leave that for today.
We'll leave that one. You can leave that one for again, folks. If there's nothing else under any other business, we'll leave it there. The date, time, and place of the next meeting is next Wednesday at this time here, and I wish you all the best with it.
In the Senate chamber.
Oh, in the Senate chamber, because we have the visitors from Dublin.
Chair, before we close, could I just thank you for your patient and good-humoured chairmanship of this committee over the last year and a half that I've been here.
Being tested.
You've been sorely tested.
Chair, can I echo that as well? Just wish you all the best for your move on.
Thank you very much indeed.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Best of luck.
Going to a much quieter committee of health. I'm not sure about that. But thank you very much indeed to everybody and to the team round as well. It's been much appreciated, your work and help and assistance. So thank you. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you now.
Committee room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.